Welcome to another episode of Challenge to Champion. And this is a new segment that we're both really excited about. It's going to be a segment where I speak to my lovely wife every now and again. We haven't really thought about how often we would be doing it, maybe like once a month or so on. I will be speaking to you in between, which will not be recordings.
Not only on the podcast.
Yes.
Okay, great.
So this is the formal introduction. Podcast land. This is my wife, Nikki Meyer, or Nikki
Hello.
Meyer as I like to call her. And I thought it would be a good idea to give a bit of an introduction about who you are. I should say this is a second take because the
Yeah.
first take there was technical difficulties.
Mm.
The camera stopped recording. The audio was in the wrong format. This is really a technical thing.
Yeah, growing pains of starting a podcast.
Yeah. But we won't let that bother us or let that
No.
stop us from putting this out and doing this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and guide us through to hit the main points that we hit in the previous one because
Okay.
there was things that we said that I thought, yeah, this is really cool and this is really important. And even things that were new to me.
Cool.
So firstly, Nicoline Meyer, you are a biokenetesist of trade
Yes.
and you are my wife. Um, so just to get the basics out of the way of who you are and how you fit in. So what is really interesting to me and what is one of the first things that I tell people normally is your upbringing and where you come from and how your life started, your early adult life. And I would like for you to tell that story a bit of your upbringing, where you went to school, that whole story. And I think the guests will see why I'm really excited to share this with everyone.
Okay. Yeah, you always tell me that I should tell people where I come from because recently I've just been saying that I come from Pretoria, but it's not 100% true. And I guess my upbringing does have a lot to do with the person that I am today. So it is probably very unique. I actually was born in South Africa and lived in Kempton Park, went to Afrikaans lower school. And when I was about 9 or 10 years old, my dad got a job in Hong Kong. So we immigrated to Hong Kong. And then I lived there from the age of 9 until about 19. I stayed an extra year after school. And then I came back to South Africa to study. But I was actually staying there for about 10 years. My parents still stayed there until 2018 or 2019. And then they only came back from Hong Kong. So they were there for almost 20 years. So yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about that is a lot of people immigrate to various parts of the world, but I think a lot of the parts that we South Africans normally go to are very similar to what we have here, like Australia, New
Yeah,
Zealand, America. It's a real similar lifestyle to what we
yeah.
have here in South Africa, and where I think as the Asian countries
It's very
is
different.
really different. The
Yeah.
whole traditions and just the living style.
Yeah.
How can you elaborate a bit more about that?
Well, Hong Kong particularly, it's not, I mean, I think most people think of, when they think of Hong Kong, most of the time South Africans don't know where it is. So they will probably say, can you speak Japanese? Or how is it living in Japan? And then I'm like, Hong Kong isn't even in Japan. It's in China, or it's part of China. And then when people think China, they're like, oh, China, that doesn't sound great because you think of like rural China that you maybe see in the movies or on the news or something like that. But Hong Kong is a city. It's a very metropolitan, massive city that is filled with expats. So there's lots of people from all over the globe that live there and work there. I think most people that end up there because of work. It's a metropolitan city. It's a business hub of the world. A huge economic economically thriving city, I think. Even now, after it's been taken over by China, I still think it's going to be one of the biggest economic hubs of the world. But so there are people from all over that live there. And to give you an idea, I was in a lower school. It was an international school, so it was DBIS, Discovery Bay International School, and I'd come from a school that was Kempton Park, Laerskool Kruinsig, very Afrikaans. And suddenly I was in a school where I had to speak English. The kids loved my accent. They kept asking me to say things because they thought my accent was really cool. And they were kids from Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Philippines, India. So you really were exposed to so many cultures and religions. That's one of the things that was very, very cool about Hong Kong. When I was in high school, I was in a high school on the mainland. So you have Hong Kong is made of a couple of islands, and we actually lived on an island, Discovery Bay, and our school was on the main island. So you had to take a ferry, well, a bus from your house to the ferry pier in the morning, a ferry to the other side to Hong Kong Island, and then from Hong Kong Island we had to get another bus to go to school. And and that was a really nice school. Our school was a 10-story building. We had a swimming pool, we had basketball courts, we had an athletics track, we had indoor sports arenas, outdoor sports arenas. Yeah, it's very different to what I think school life,
Yeah, it's like in South
education,
Africa.
all of that stuff is like in South Africa. Yeah.
I think another thing is everything works there.
Yeah.
Their economy is in excellent condition. Uh, their infrastructure, their roadworks, their transportation, everything works really well there.
Yeah.
And it feels like there's enough money for all of these things to keep everything
Definitely.
going and to keep everything up to a high
Yeah.
standard. And that's something that we definitely don't have here.
And I mean, it shouldn't be misconstrued because there is still a lot of uh, people that are very wealthy and people that are very, very poor. So it's not like there isn't that sort of setup or,
Dispersity.
yeah, diversity there as well. It is there as well. But yeah, it's very different to what anyone can picture from South Africa, I think.
Yeah, and I've seen some things about like the living conditions for the most of the like the worker force in
Yeah.
Hong Kong is really bad. They have like 10 people squeezed in this small
Yeah.
space. So those also are the terrible living conditions.
Yeah.
But I think as South Africans and what we are used to here with big yards and big houses and driving everywhere in your car and having a couple of cars,
Yeah.
that total concept is changed around when you go and live there.
Yeah. Well, first let's think about the living situation. So we had a house in South Africa in Kempton Park with 3 bedrooms or however big the house was, but with a massive yard. Then you move suddenly to the city where there's not enough space for all the people that live in Hong Kong. So they end up building lots of high rise buildings. When you visited Hong Kong with me, we were staying in a building that on the 17th floor of the building
With a dog.
with a dog. Well, and there's a lift at least. You don't have to
Yeah.
climb
Yeah.
17 floors every day. But we had the best view of Hong Kong from our living room. We could see the entire skyline from our living room. That was very cool. But I always tell people that when we moved there, my little sister and I had to share a bedroom, and my older sister had her own bedroom. And my little sister and I shared a bedroom until my older sister was out of school. So I think that's the reason her and I are very close as well. But yeah, the space was so limited. You had such a small house, you almost couldn't miss each other's business. You were in each other's business the whole time because you were so confined to a very small space. And then with the moving about, we didn't have cars. On the island where we stayed in Discovery Bay, there was golf carts. So it's almost like living in a golf estate in South Africa. You drive around with golf carts from your house to the ferry pier. We couldn't afford a golf cart because
Oh,
it's almost
it's
like
like
as
a
much as,
million dollars.
yeah, it's almost as much as buying a BMW here.
Yeah, and you can't just go buy it somewhere else and bring it on to
No,
Discovery Bay.
no.
I always describe Discovery Bay as like Sunsetty,
Yeah,
because I think that's the best comparison of what we have here. And it really is like Sun City with high rises and
yeah,
a lot of buses and that type of transport and
yeah.
schools. How many schools are there on?
On Discovery Bay, there was two when I was living there, but I think there's now three. Well, we're talking about one high school, one lower school, and a Chinese school, and a couple of kindergartens.
Yeah, and I think like there were like two shopping centers, like small centers there,
Yeah,
but it was like a little town
yeah,
secluded from
yeah,
the main Hong Kong hustle and
yeah,
bustle, heavy, busy city life.
yeah. It started as a resort island, so it was just for holiday makers, but it ended up as a residential island, and I think it just kept that resort feeling, which is cool. You almost get it to step away from feeling like you're living in a city, like you said. But the other part of the transport that made it so cool is it actually gave us as kids a lot of freedom. So we could move about without our parents having to drop us off for after school activities or anything like that. Even over weekends, if we had sports events or um, cultural events, we'd be able to go by ourselves. And it gave us a lot of independence. I think it's a type of independence that kids in South Africa don't get because it's not safe here, or your parents are driving you around everywhere in any case.
I think
Um,
like me who grew up in Secunda, we also had a lot of that same independence.
yeah,
I was driving to school with a bicycle since like the age of 7.
yeah.
Um, it's like grade 1. We
Out
yeah,
of the
you and your
nest,
brother
you're fine.
go to school with the
Yeah.
bicycles. It's not a problem. I don't think here in Pretoria that is
No,
how
definitely
anyone
not.
does it. Um, but yeah, I think that's very valuable. The independence that it gives you, the way just to think for yourself, to become your own person, and just to sit with the normal difficulties of managing, finding your way.
Yeah, being on
Literally,
time for the ferry,
yes.
not missing the ferry. So you also had a few responsibilities about you can't be late for school, so you can't miss your bus, so you can't miss your ferry, and then you can't miss the school bus, because then besides the responsibility of not being late for school, you'd have to pay for your own taxi when you get to Hong Kong side, so there's financial implications as well. So there's many lessons that we actually gain from having to make that trip every day to school.
I really like the thought of being able to get that childhood. I think it's really valuable,
Yeah, it's
and I
cool.
think maybe you don't realize how valuable it is yet. But I think it's a really cool story, and it's a cool upbringing.
Yeah, maybe it will be when we have kids and I see how they have to grow up compared to what we had. It might be more clear. But
Yeah,
you were in Hong Kong with me twice.
yeah.
How was that
I
for
really
you?
liked it. I really liked it. I would miss the independence of having your own car and being able to go to go and do some 4x4ing, or going just on a game drive, or going to a farm,
Yeah,
that type of thing. I would surely miss that. Um, and I did miss that when we were on holiday there.
yeah,
Really fast, I start missing that type of independence of being able
yeah,
to be in my own car, or have my own space, that type of thing. So I'm sure that I would miss that, although there's a lot of other things that you would gain.
yeah,
But what is it that you miss from Hong Kong? Because it's now about 10 years that you back in South Africa.
yeah, 13.
You came to study here in
In
2010.
2010, yeah. That was my first year. I it's hard to say what I miss exactly. I think I do sometimes miss the fact that everything was so operational. You walk into the, let's say, immigration where you're going to go get your passports or you need to go get your ID or something like that, and everything's so organized. Something that you sort of miss in our country when you have to do something that involves a little bit of admin
Especially from the government side.
from the government side. That's really difficult sometimes here. And there it was so easy. They're so organized. Even when you go just through a shop doing your groceries, they have a very like time is money attitude. Everyone.
Very
And
productive.
even the person packing your trolley, your groceries into a bag, they don't really have time to waste. They sort of feel like they're doing their job. Even the person sweeping the or cleaning around the bus stops and sweeping the floor or the concrete around the bus stops, they take a lot of pride in their work. So I think that's the sort of thing that you pick up about the difference in a country. It's very clean there. There's lots of pride in work. There's lots of um, people just going about their business, but really focused on the business that they're doing as well, or the job that they have. So that's the one thing I miss in terms of day to day life. But I do love South Africa. I don't think I'd ever move back to Hong Kong just for those small things that are different from here. It's a funny story. My sister, that's younger than me, she was in Hong Kong. Out of us three siblings, she was in Hong Kong for the longest time. And you'd think that she'd be like this city slicker, like a New Yorker or something. But she's staying in wilderness on the coast, like a hippie in a little log cabin in the woods in the middle of nowhere with a beautiful view of the mountain.
Extremely
She does
happy.
conservation. She pretty much lives in the bush the whole time. So nothing about Hong Kong would have drawn her back. I spoke to her recently and she said if she'd continued to live there, she probably would have stayed there. But now that she's been in South Africa and she's lived this life that's been so free and so part of nature, she can't imagine going back there and living there. And I think I feel the same. Once I've lived in South Africa, I can't imagine myself living in Hong Kong again. I'd love to go for holidays, and I love shopping there. I know all the local places. I love eating their food, and we love the cuisines that you get there because it's Thai and it's Cantonese and it's
There's a big
there's
variety.
just awesome food. And when you went there with me as well, you don't go to the tourist places if you live in Hong Kong. You go to where the locals go. And I think that that's the type of stuff that I miss doing, hopping on a train and going somewhere. And yeah, but that's about it.
I think it's very true what you said. The fact that now living here in South Africa, you will miss it because I thought, was there something that you would have missed when you went over? But you were so young, so you probably didn't have many memories of South Africa because it's still starting phase of your life. So maybe if you were here for your first 18 years and then going
Then,
overseas, then,
yeah,
and I think that's a lot of the feelings that people have that immigrate. They
yeah,
miss a lot of the things that they used to do or that they
yeah,
were able to do because the culture is quite unique, the
yeah.
South
It's
African
a
way of
shock,
doing
when
things.
they say like a culture shock Hong Kong is a culture shock for South Africans, I think. Um, I can use the example of us as children moving to Hong Kong. We adapted very easily. My dad, I think, also adapted quite easily, but my mom really struggled because she's lived in South Africa for 40 years of her life. Her family is here, her friends were here, and then suddenly you have to live in this country. You don't have friends. You don't have people that are necessarily from the same culture as you, that speak the same language as you. So you really have to try and be as flexible as possible to fit in there. And I think that is very difficult. So I can understand, like, maybe if you go to countries that are more like South Africa, and I can't really say this truly because I've never been to Australia or New Zealand, but I can assume it's a little bit easier to adapt.
And I think with the amount of people that we know that go
Amount
there,
of, yeah, South
there's a lot of
Africans.
new South Africans there,
Yeah.
so we know it's a thing.
You're going to have a community there. Well, that's a nice thing about Hong Kong. We did end up having a lot of close friends from South Africa in Hong Kong, living in Discovery Bay, where we were living as well. And one of my close friends in South Africa was with me in school in Hong Kong. So, yeah, you're not 100% isolated, but I think you have to open yourself up to meeting new people, befriending new people. You have to open yourself up to understanding or accepting different cultures, different religions, tasting different food. And I think kids just do that a bit easier.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so too. I think it would be easier to adapt to adapt as a child.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, but that is, I think that is covering a good part. But what is it that you think would keep you here now in South Africa? What are the things that you think makes South Africa unique as a place to stay? I don't have any experience of anywhere else, so I don't have any frame of reference as to this is a nice place to stay or that is a nice place to stay. Why why would you root for South Africa and say this is where I want to maybe bring up my kids and build a life?
It's difficult to say because there are so many people moving to Australia or England or New Zealand, those obvious countries that us South Africans are drawn to. And even if I had the opportunity to move to one of those places, I don't think I would. But it's difficult to say exactly why. I think part of the reason is one that you stated, like the ability to move around freely with your own car, your own vehicle. Maybe part of it is economic. So we, in our living circumstances, and with the job that you do, we can do quite well in this country, whereas in another country we would be working class or we'd be struggling a little bit more, I think. So the rand actually being quite weak is in our favor sometimes, or at least like having people that can work for you in your company. I think that's one of the benefits of living here. I think partially also having seen the greener grass, the apparent greener grass, and then knowing that it's polluted a lot of the times. It's very hot in the summer, you can hardly do anything. You don't have your own transport, your family's far away. There's so many things that make the grass not so green.
Yeah,
And
and
then you,
those aren't the things that are on the advertisements or
no,
on the billboards. Come to Hong Kong, you never have to see your friends and family
yeah,
again. That
no.
doesn't sound great. But
Yeah, so the greener grass thing isn't always the truth.
mm,
And I like the type of things that we get to do here that tourists think about, like you said, going to a reserve and going on a game drive and seeing animals in the bush, or going to the beach. I mean, everything here is so close by. We can drive there and we can spend a weekend at the beach or in the Kruger or somewhere where you're so in touch with nature. And I think space as well. And I remember one thing about Hong Kong is it felt very claustrophobic. If you leave Discovery Bay and you go to Hong Kong Island, then you're walking through the city. There's so many people there. You're walking like shoulder to shoulder. You're just grazing past people. And
It would
it's,
look like the like in the movies if you see New York
yeah, people
around
just like
lunchtime,
rushing
everyone
past each
just passing
other.
each other.
Yeah. And I think that feeling of not having like your own space is something that you'd miss as well. I guess in other countries like New Zealand and Australia, it might be different. I don't know. But I think I'd miss having a yard and a pool and being able to lie in the sunshine. Um, yeah.
I think that's things that we definitely take for granted here because we're so used to it.
Yeah.
But those are big selling points for the country and for what we have here and why
Yeah.
it's nice to stay here.
Definitely.
The other thing, of course, is the business opportunities
Yeah.
and how we are able to do business and to employ people and to grow a business here in South Africa. I think probably it's like a little sister or little brother of America because I think they're a bit more entrepreneurial and business orientated. But I think we have a lot of those, um, and that is probably due to the fact of all the regulations and BEE and
Yeah.
all of those things that are being implemented that has pushed us into being more entrepreneurial because we know there probably isn't going to be a job for us in a company because due to our skin color, due to all the regulations, we won't be able to get a job. And that has been something that you have been pursuing as well, building a business, building a
Yeah.
career, something a bit more than just a job, a 9 to 5. And I think that maybe South Africa also allows that so much
That's
more.
very true. Yeah. And even, I mean, I would never would have considered starting a business. I don't think if I hadn't met you. I think we had this conversation the other day where I just thought if I had gotten my degree, I probably would have ended up working for someone
As a
or as a
biokineticist.
biokineticist or as a medical rep or something like that. But I would have been working for a company for I don't know how long. And so the opportunity was there for me to start my own business, and you encouraged me to do it. And I'm really enjoying it. I think it's one of the things that I never would have had the opportunity to otherwise if I'd been staying somewhere else, maybe Hong Kong or like you said in any other country. It's more difficult to do that. So I'm
Um,
glad that that opportunities are there for us.
can you give us a little explanation of what a biokineticist does? Because
Yes.
I know a lot of people are hearing that word and they think, oh,
What on earth is
yeah, what
this?
is this?
Yeah. When I was in school, we knew what physiotherapists were because there were physiotherapists in Hong Kong, but there wasn't anything like a biokineticist. So I started studying in Tux and I was studying sports science undergrad. And one of our first lectures was about what you can do with your degree. So then they said you can become a biokineticist. And I was like, what on earth is a biokineticist? And then someone explained to me that it's basically rehabilitation using movement and exercise and stretching. So, where a physiotherapist will use maybe massaging and needling and those sorts of hands on modalities, we use exercise. So, we try to identify where the cause of the problem is coming from. And then, based on that cause, we strengthen certain muscles, stretch other muscles, try and really get that person functioning optimally. But my specific interest is in women's health. So I really love working with women who have had babies or are pregnant. So prenatal, postnatal, and then also women who are just trying to maybe adapt their training program, or athletes and menopausal women. So that's a little bit more my niche that I work in. But yeah, that's what biokineticists is
Yeah,
biokinetics.
and you have been pivoting basically into that direction
Yeah,
the last couple of years, where that has really became your niche.
yeah,
And I think that's also an important thing for a business. If you're just doing what everyone else does,
yeah,
you won't be able to stand out. And I think with your specific knowledge, and like your employees currently
yeah,
are are also in that same niche, and they have a lot of experience.
yeah. My employee, her name is Bridget. Shout out Bridget. She is how cool is that? She is now doing her doctoral degree, so she's gotten a bit more qualified than I am. She's doing her doctoral degree in postural deviations that are found in pregnant or not pregnant women, postpartum women. So in other countries, mostly Western countries, women tend to carry their babies in their front. So they have those like carriers that you carry your baby, but mostly in the front. And then our African ladies in South Africa carry their babies on their back. And so she's trying to identify what are the postural implications of front carrying versus back carrying. So very cool. I mean, she's also into that,
Yeah,
into women's health. I mean, my practice still helps everyone and anyone. We've got patients with all sorts of pains and injuries, post injuries, all of that sort of stuff. But I really love women's health. That's where I'm trying to push into that direction.
yeah. I think when you say your employees are more qualified than you, and that might be a problem, but I think that's perfect. That's what you want.
Yeah,
You want to get the best employees and
yeah,
people more qualified who maybe don't want to have a business, and you wanting to own a business to get the best employees. That's
yeah,
the perfect scenario. And I don't think you have to feel that's strange. That's perfect.
yeah. I think so too. And we teach each other things, so it's nice to have someone that I don't feel I have to spoon feed with everything.
Yeah, you want someone
She's
competent.
really competent. She's taken charge, so that's really nice for me as well. So yeah, I'm happy for now,
Yeah, and
and
there will be a lot of growth in that business as well. We are planning a
definitely,
lot of things, a lot of angles.
yeah. How can we grow the whole time?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think this has been a really good first phase introduction. And like I said, we're going to try and do this monthly, probably something like that. We'll have some topics which we'll try to cover and things which interest us. Maybe if we have some comments on things
yeah,
that people what people would like us to discuss. And I think we have a interesting life, and a lot of hurdles and struggles, and we have to keep making plans and finding ways out of it.
yeah. I think we are probably in a position where we can maybe inspire quite a few people, whether they are couples or individuals or wives or husbands. I think we've got quite a lot of insights into life and experience in life as well. So,
Yeah, even if it's just they can see there's someone out there who has it worse than them, or who's just in making something good out of a worse situation.
yeah,
Whatever it is that someone can find out of this, feel free to find it, and
yeah,
find inspiration, motivation, whatever you can.
yeah,
Um, but we're not going to lie about it. We're going to try and have honest conversations and honest opinions on things.
yeah. Well, besides anything, this is just a really cool time for me to get to sit and chat with you as well, which is nice. Thank you for asking me to be on the podcast, by the way.
Yeah,
I
of
think it's going to
course,
be cool.
of
And
course.
yeah, looking forward to sharing. our insights.
Yes. Let's hope that everything played together with the
Oh
recording
my goodness, I
of
hope
the
so.
audio and video. And if everything has gone according to plan, this will be released tomorrow, and that will be Wednesday.
So no sleep for you tonight.
No sleep. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank
Now
you.
everyone knows you, and they will know who I'm referencing when I speak about Nikki.
Yeah. Face behind the name.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.